Week 15 of the fantasy football season. Here's the top 12 defense DST units. I'm ranking number 1, the San Francisco 49ers. So this 49er defense, the last few weeks, they're really playing great football and going out there and making plays and holding teams down for the most part. So this week with a great matchup at the Arizona Cardinals, where their offensive line is in shambles. They don't really have many weapons on the offense besides Trey McBride and Hollywood Brown. I think this Niner team goes into Arizona, takes care of business once again. And Chase Young's definitely been a big pickup at the trade deadline as well for them, coming from the Washington Commanders, number 2, the Kansas City Chiefs. So this Chief defense all season, they're holding teams down. Teams low 20s for the most part this season. And this week here, great matchup with the New England Patriots, an offense that struggled all season. I know last week they looked good. Ezekiel Elliott had a big game, no doubt about it, at the Pittsburgh Steelers. But this Kansas City Chief team, after coming off a tough loss, I think they go into New England, they take care of business, and it wouldn't be surprising if they have a huge performance defensively and offensively as Kansas City. So after a bad taste in their mouth and a bad loss last week, this Chief DST goes out there and puts in a great game, I think. Number 3, the Miami Dolphins. I know the Dolphins last week, they faltered at the end of that game, and the Tennessee Titans in the fourth quarter came back and won that game after it pretty much looked finished with 6 minutes left, but they drove down the field quickly. But this week, a good matchup versus the New York Jets. I know the Jets last week, they put up 30 points. They won 30-6. Zach Wilson looked good, no doubt about it. But I think it was one game, and this Jet offense still has a lot of problems with the offensive line. And still the decision-making for Zach Wilson, I don't think, is all that great. So this week, after coming off a tough loss, and they took care of business versus the New York Jets early on Black Friday a few weeks ago, Dolphins bounce back and have a good game number 4, the Cleveland Browns. So this Brown defense, they're holding teams down as well in the mid-teens, low 20s for the majority of the season. And this week with the Chicago Bears coming to town, I think they could create a few turnovers in this one. We know Justin Fields, he's been a quarterback that's taken a lot of hits this season, and also a quarterback that's turned the football over and just holds on to the football a little bit too long as well. So I think this Brown team with Myles Garrett and company could create havoc in this one for Justin Fields and this offensive line, where their offensive line isn't blocking good and the decision-making isn't as quick enough as well for Fields. So I think this week the Browns, after last week it was a shootout with them and the Jacksonville Jaguars, hold this offense down, like I said, mid-teens, low 20s, and causes a few turnovers and sacks as well. Number 5, the Atlanta Falcons. So the Falcons is a one-week streaming option this week. I like them a lot in a good matchup, obviously, at the Carolina Panthers, where they're the worst team in the league, 1-12. Their offense really don't have playmakers besides Adam Thielen's had a few good games here and there this season, and Chuba Hubbard. But besides that, teams, the last few weeks, they're making Bryce Young try to spread the football out and try to beat him with other options like DJ Chark and Jonathan Mingo, and it just hasn't worked out. So this Falcon defense, for the most part this season, they've been a solid unit, and they've held teams scoring down for the most part. I know last week Tampa Bay went in and beat them over there in Atlanta, putting up 29 points. But I think this week this defense, control of this ball game, plays well. Number 6, the New Orleans Saints. So this Saint defense last week had a big ball game, no doubt about it, versus the Carolina Panthers. And this week I know Tommy DeVito and this New York Giant team playing good football, scoring touchdowns and winning ball games 3 in a row now. But this New Orleans Saint defense, they're a better unit at home than they've been on the road. And this Giant team still don't really have many weapons on the offense. Wendell Robinson, I know he made a few good plays in last week's game. Jalen Hyatt, he's no doubt about it, a deep ball threat. Darren Waller possibly could return. But besides Saquon Barkley, there's no one in this offense that I think's a real threat, and a threat that will scare the Saint team from not going out there and making plays. So this week indoors, once again, in the home game for the Saints, even with a hot Giant team winning 3 in a row, I think this defense has a good ball game and puts in a top 6 performance. 7, the Indianapolis Colts. So this Indianapolis Colts team give up a lot of points this season, no doubt about it, but they also turn the football over a lot, and they've scored a lot of touchdowns defensively, led by Moore in the secondary. So this week here, it's a good matchup versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, a Saturday game. Mitch Trubisky, once again, is going to start at quarterback, and we know Mitch Trubisky, quarterback that's turned the football over a lot over the last few seasons, and a quarterback that's had trouble throwing consistent touchdowns, and his offense is being offenses that score touchdowns. So this week here, I think this Indianapolis Colts team could play good defense. It's the Pittsburgh Steelers coming to town, which is always a plus, where this Colt defense has been pretty good at home than it's been on the road over the last few seasons. And that's pretty much with any team. So right now, with Mitchell Trubisky coming in and this Pittsburgh Steelers team. Indianapolis, it wouldn't surprise me if they have a pick six or at least a few turnovers in this game. And this is a game where it's a grinded out between both teams, where it's mid-teens, low 20s. Number 8, the Los Angeles Chargers. So this Charger defense, they have a good streaming option this season where they've versed poor offenses. And we saw last week this offense didn't do anything. This Las Vegas Raiders team, where they scored no points in the game, couldn't move the football consistently, and even a few turnovers as well. So I think the Chargers, with no Justin Herbert, have to rely on their defense even more to keep their slim playoff hopes alive. And this week, I think, led by Khalil Mack, they can make a few plays in this game and get pressure on Aiden O'Connell and this Raider offense. Number 9, the Baltimore Ravens. So this Raven defense has been a top 5 unit this season in terms of fantasy points. And this defense, they've held teams down mid-teens, low 20s majority of the season. This week, I know it's a tougher matchup versus a good offense in the Jacksonville Jaguars, even though we know they're going to be out with Christian Kirk once again. At Baltimore, they get pressure on the quarterback. They get off to good leads, and that's where they make offenses one-dimensional, even though last week Matthew Stafford and this Ram offense definitely moved the football on this Raven defense. But this week, I think versus Jacksonville, Sunday Night Football, they make a few plays as Baltimore, and this is a grinded-out type of ball game. Number 10, the Pittsburgh Steelers. So the Steelers last week, I thought we're going to have a great ball game and be the number 1 option versus the New England Patriots, but obviously that wasn't the case. So this week they're number 10 on the list. They're versus the Indianapolis Colts in Indianapolis, and this Colt team has a good offense. Gardner Minshew's a gunslinger. I know he turns the football over at a pretty decent rate and takes some sacks, but he puts points on the board as well. And when you got wide receivers like Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, a decent 3-man trio there. And also out of the backfield, Jonathan Taylor possibly coming back. I don't think this Steelers team is going to have a cakewalk stopping this Indianapolis offense. So this week, I still think the Steelers could hold it in the mid-teens, low 20s between these two teams. But I don't really see them creating a lot of turnovers or scoring off of defense. Number 11, the Los Angeles Rams. Rams as a 1-week streaming option have a pretty decent matchup versus the Washington Commanders, where their offense gives up the 3rd most fantasy points to DSTs on the season. So this Ram team, their playoff hopes are slim as well, but still alive. And this Ram team with Aaron Donald, you never could count them out to go out there and make some plays for fantasy owners and just in general for their team as a whole. So this week with Washington coming in, and I know they got Brian Robinson, and I know Sam Howell's had a good season. I still think the Rams could go out there and put in a good performance. And the 12th and final defense DST I'm ranking this week is the Chicago Bears. So this Bear DST, believe it or not, the last few weeks have gone out there and had double-digit fantasy points. And this week at Joe Flacco and the Cleveland Browns, I think they could get pressure on Joe Flacco. We know Flacco's moving the football well, but also we know he's a statue back there in the pocket. And if they could get pressure led by Montez Sweat, causing havoc in the backfield on Joe Flacco, I think they could get a few sacks in this game. I think they could create a few turnovers. And this Bear team, they've had success finding the end zone as well from their defense. So this week at Cleveland, a defense widely available in many fantasy leagues. They're definitely a defense up 12, so that's a top 12 defense DST units I'm ranking for Week 15 of the fantasy football season.